All right, so we're going to jump into treasures training. So for this portion, when I say that I'm a treasurer, I happen to find this meme on the Google. So what my parents think I do, sitting in a pile of money. What my partner thinks I do, just stare at a computer. What my friends think I do, monitor a pile of money, I wish. What my boss thinks I do, sleep on the job. What my colleagues think I do, stare at my computer doing nothing. But what I really do, a bajillion tasks. How many of you can relate to doing all the things, whether it's fundraising, managing budgets, dues? If you don't yet, maybe we can get you there. So, all right, roles of the treasurer. So some of these we just picked from our Constitution template. Some of you may have your own constitutions or guidance from a national affiliated organization, or you kind of spin it off and made it your own. So for roles of the treasurer, these are some common ones, not necessarily blanket for everybody. So if you're a little different, then that's perfectly fine. So most treasurers prepare a budget and regularly report financial records, collect dues, give out receipts for those dues, set an approval process for purchases being made by whether it's officers, members, advisors, or even for yourself as you're managing everything, pay off financial obligations promptly, such as room reservations, monitor and keep good financial records, including in detail your organization's banking procedures. Does anyone have other responsibilities that your role oversees that you would like to add? Pretty much summarizes it. Getting some head nods, perfect. All right. So for those who are new treasurers, or maybe you're looking to recruit treasurers, suggested skills and items. So this is just blanket of some suggestions. Items, receipt books. So whenever things are in person again, and we're allowed to have transactional activities, whenever you receive cash or a check, making sure you're given a receipt right away. So that way you and the other person have a record of, yes, you paid off your dues, or yes, you paid for a t-shirt, etc. If you are collecting cash or checks, a fire safe secured money bag. So this is something that you might need to use organizational dues or put in your budget to have a secured bag, so that way you're able to collect these items and travel safely to wherever banking establishment you utilize. I've also seen orgs use a cash box. Virtual methods are probably maybe the most secure. And so be sure to talk to former treasurers if you're transitioning, advisor, president, on what y'all would like to do to move forward. A treasurer email. So I know most often people use their personal emails, but what happens if it moves on to the next treasurer and the email correspondence you had with one member about, hey, yeah, you paid off your dues, isn't accessible for them because it's in your email, not theirs. This is when we recommend for orgs to start Gmail accounts for each position. So that way all those receipts are in one location, and past treasurers or current treasurers can look through the past and be like, okay, I see the email now that you did pay off this obligation. Or, hey, I got this notification from the union about this transaction for a room, and now I can go back to it to make sure it's paid off. It's also good to keep receipt templates, so you know the day, the time, the name, the memo of like, hey, this is an email saying that we did get your Venmo payment, your Cash App payment. Because I know the app technically tells you, but it's always good to have a follow-up so you have all the paper trails. A budget spreadsheet. So making sure if you're not Excel savvy, it might be time to start. So under skills, you'll see Excel is definitely one of the top bullet points of knowing how to handle that, because Excel can easily become your best friend when it comes to it automatically inputting numbers and calculating for you. Y'all, I told you earlier, I'm not a math person. That's how I beat the system, is learning Excel. And so for the skills, Excel, being detail-oriented, organized, because you are handling other people's money or transactions. Communication, as Sarah was sharing in the portion of our fundraising 101, you're communicating a lot, whether it's to potential donors, to committee members. So making sure you're able to articulate what it is that you're wanting, when, where, and how. And then financial understanding. Who really has a financial understanding unless you are an accounting major like Miss Kayla? Just at least knowing that what you gain shouldn't exceed your budget and things of that nature. But other financial understandings you can kind of learn as you go with this role. So importance of budgeting. So budgets are huge no matter how big or small your organization is. This puts the monetary items in terms into a spreadsheet so you can kind of gain the full picture of what's going on. It helps provide means of allocating your resources. So if you're trying to provide merchandise to your organization, are you able to reduce the cost of merchandise because the org's behalf is going to pay for some? Or are you able to have an org scholarship, buy merchandise and materials for tabling, for recruitment whenever that's permitted? So what do you have and how can you move forward? It aids in the tracking of the actual semester and annual revenues and expenditures within goals. So with a budget, you can easily track, okay, we currently have X amount of members. This amount of members are returning with us. If dues are X amount, then we can do X, Y, and Z without fundraising, with fundraising. And so kind of eyeing what's going on and how you can move forward with the semester. Preparing a budget. So if you are a new treasurer, if you're in a position that was established beforehand, seeing if there's any transition materials. It's easy to do this if you do have a common Gmail account, like let's say each transition officer provides documents, keeping that in there for the next one to utilize, looking through past emails or seeing how things are done, or meeting with them. Meeting with them is a great time, or even shadowing in a committee to kind of see how things are done or what to do next or what you can do better. Understanding where does the money come from and how does the org function. Some orgs function primarily off of dues, so having their members pay a small fee. When it comes to setting those dues, is it, are you trying to be financially accessible for working with college students, where can you move forward with everybody paying $20 for dues? Or is it something more where you have to maybe charge $50 and seeing where would that money go? Because people definitely want to know where it is and how it's being spent. Other things of how does the org function? So do you host any big events that bring in a lot of revenue? Do you have alumni donations? Are you connected to a department that helps out? Things of that nature. And then planning. So establishing with your executive board, what's the dues? Does it need to be upped? Does it need to be lowered? How did the prior year go? For events, did y'all hit spot on with your budget? Was something like overly priced and you weren't ready for it? Was something significantly lower and you have room to do other things? And then maintaining all the documents and reports. So this is important, like Sarah said with fundraising, doing an evaluation after each fundraising event. We'll do an evaluation after each org year. So what events went well, what didn't, whether it's connected to a fundraiser or not. So that way you can kind of have an idea of what to do next year. So budget types, we have group budgets or committee budgets. It really depends on how your banking situation is set up. Group budgets tend to be one card that usually the treasurer is the card holder for. Committee budgets, sometimes you're able to get more than one card, whether it's you have one, the president has one, maybe a fundraiser has one. And so with that, kind of navigating what's more reasonable for your organization. So if you're a small org, having 3 cards to use that accesses your budget might not be the best. Big orgs, that might be understandable if you have 100 various members or committees to work with. Bank access. So when you set up a bank account, Venmo, PayPal, whichever you choose, who has access to it? More importantly, is there multiple people who can have access? So in case, let's say, your treasurer leaves or drops out, who's gonna, if they don't properly transition that bank account, who's able to go up to the bank and be like, hey, stepping in their place and making sure the transition occurs. Budget. So group budget tends to be one giant spreadsheet, which I'll be able to show you in a bit, that you can navigate. And sometimes you'll just have just blanket of, we have this much money, this much is projected to be spent towards this event, that event, etc. But committee budgets, if you have committee chairs that you oversee, because I know some big organizations, the treasurer kind of works with each individual, whether it's a recruitment committee, event committee, social media committee, they will have individual budgets for each committee to manage. Hey, your committee gets $50 for the semester, your committee gets $100, and then working with them on making their budgets established. process. So when it comes to being treasurer, sometimes the tricky part can be making payments. So right now it's pretty easy to just kind of jump on Walmart, Amazon.com, order something, have it delivered. But if you have to go in person to get something, what does that look like? Do you have to go, or are you able to delegate it to someone else and have a process of reimbursement? If you do that, do they have to fill out a, let's say, a reimbursement form in advance to tell you exactly what they're going to buy and how much they will need back? So kind of keeping tabs on what's being spent, where, when, how, and do you need to go with them? Because that kind of goes into the officer student balance of setting your schedule accordingly, so that way you're not overexerting yourself and you're able to delegate. Treasurer's report. So sometimes in membership meetings, it's common for every officer position, every executive board member to present on their what sections of the board they oversee. So for treasurer's report, sometimes treasurers, it's easy to be like, oh, I just collect money. I don't have anything to share. Well, some members actually want to know where their money is going. So for a treasurer's report, something to incorporate, which could also elevate your chance to be able to public speak, answer questions, and be more transparent with your members, is having this report. So in the beginning of the report, having a title, the org name, date, and time frame. So that way, when you're saving this document for future treasurers to see and utilize, everything's outlined for them. So you can see this form's a little outdated, it's from 2006, but we can tell that this is the treasurer's report for the month ending August 31st. So this is their August budget. Sections that they covered shows the beginning balance. So as of July 30th up until August 31st. So other sections you can incorporate in your report. So the beginning balance from July. Also, what about some rollover? Were there things that you had in your budget last year that didn't quite get spent, especially during COVID when events kind of stopped? What can you do moving forward with that? Having a section for pending expenses. So if you know that you have this room reservation coming up and it's $150, making sure that you're not forgetting about that balance whenever you're partaking in other expenses. Projected income. If we have 10 members currently, but we hope for recruitment season, we're going to get another 8, what would that look like with numbers? So if current members pay $25, okay, that's X amount of money towards the budget that we know that we for sure have. Projected fundraising. So that comes in with goals. What do we want to gain with new member recruitment? How much money will we gain from their membership dues if you have dues established? How much do we plan to fundraise? And that kind of ties into what Sarah was sharing earlier about keys to fundraising. What goals do you want to set and achieve? And then content. Where's the money coming from and going? When, how much? So making sure to outline those things that are pertinent for members to know. Bank options. So of course, when it comes to budgeting, you kind of need a place for the money to go, right? So for bank options, it really does vary on what bank provider you want. It's good to do research. On the slide, there's 4 commonly used banking systems. So we have Wells Fargo, the Teachers Credit Union, DAT2, North Star Bank, First State Bank. But you can also see that each one, this is also a very old chart, so you'd have to see what's current up-to-date numbers. But some different bank accounts charge service for using their accounts. So making sure that your organization can withhold that, because when you have a bank account open, just because it's the summer doesn't mean they're not going to charge you for utilizing their services. So does your org make enough to surpass those charges? So do your research on what might work best for you all. These are just bank accounts, so sometimes there's monthly transactions, sometimes there's minimum that you have to hold in your bank account, sometimes there's a deposit in order to open. So definitely I would recommend talking to a bank provider who could further assist on your special circumstance of being an organization. So can you get one person added to an account, 2 people, 3? What does that look like with transition? When it comes to cards, are you able to close off one card under this treasurer's name and transfer to a different name? So asking all those important questions when it comes to open up a bank account. Other options, so some of y'all shared that you have either Venmo, Cash App, maybe a PayPal account. Things to consider when you're looking into these options or any bank options are who has access to the account, what protocols will the org follow. So protocols are usually established with bank accounts. For PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App, that might look a little different. So look into what that might mean for your organization in regards to having proper security. Can the accounts be transferred or transitioned to the next treasurer? Can funds be transferred, let's say from PayPal, Cash App, Venmo into the org bank account? So is that a seamless process? Is there a debit card associated if you do have these accounts? Can multiple people have access? Can multiple people have cards? Things of that nature are definitely important to ask or look for when you're researching. Debit cards, so when you do have means of a debit card, some of the pros are they're convenient to use, especially when it comes to online shopping or in person. It processes fast and you can make online payments. Cons, if you're not watching your budget, it's easy to overdraft. If you have multiple cards, there could be multiple problems. Let's say one committee goes ahead and makes a purchase without your knowledge, and now the other committee can't purchase things for their event that's tomorrow. So making sure you're monitoring that. And then potential for misuse. So this is why it's important to have processes in place, because let's say treasurer goes rogue and takes money. Is there anyone who can jump in, talk to the bank provider or the app provider and be like, hey, can you cut them off so we don't lose all of our money? So banking accounts, so I'm going to briefly go through this one because I know a lot of you already have one established. So opening a bank account, if it's specifically for Wells Fargo, we do have a process with Student Activities where we have a partnership with Wells Fargo. Currently, the one on campus is closed, but you can go to any Wells Fargo location, especially here in Denton. They seem to know our process when it comes to this. So checking account verification, once you obtain your tax ID number, which is through the IRS, you'll fill out the checking account verification request form, and we'll fill out a letter providing who to be added to your bank accounts and whatnot. If you currently have a bank account open and you're trying to just transition the names, you'll fill out that form request and Sarah will process it to make sure that we can get the right people on your account. For new orgs, you will have to get, if you haven't had a bank account before, get in your tax ID number through the IRS, setting that up. For updating a bank account, you've just filled the letter, let us know who's being added or removed, and we'll move forward with that process. If you are trying to set up, we can talk more in depth either after today's session or set up a meeting with me and Sarah, and we'll be happy to assist you as best as we can. But we will err with caution that we are not professional bank providers. So most often, if it's specific questions, we might refer you to talking to your bank provider or the IRS. Keys to financial success. So internal controls, sometimes when it comes to making payments or doing reimbursements, have an accountability system. So is the treasurer allowed to just make purchases whenever, wherever, or should the treasurer also maybe put what they're purchasing, provide it to the president, both of them sign off, and then they can move forward. Maintain all current financial files, as we've mentioned, keeping things up to date, making sure you're documenting, dating everything. Consider creating a prior approval purchasing form. So for committee members, this is definitely important. It's like, hey, you're hosting a Valentine's Day event. This is what you reported that you're going to purchase. Cash and checks should be deposited within 24 hours of receiving. So making sure you're not holding on to expenses such as that. Making sure you're getting deposited on a timely fashion. Transitioning, so have a training orientation for new treasurers 2 months prior to the terms of service. That way you have proper time to show them the ropes, show them how it's done, and getting them access. Having a handbook is always useful. So the handbook, you could provide things such as what fundraisers you've done, what procedures you currently have, and maybe even recommendations for them. So if you're in a smaller org right now, but you know it's gaining traction and building, that's definitely helpful for things you project happening in the future. Financial records, making sure everything's up to date. Let's say it's end of the year, you had a room reservation that costs money, but you haven't gotten that receipt yet, making sure they know like, hey, this should be coming your way, so make sure you pay it off. Signatory authorities, so this is for bank accounts when you're transitioning the names, making sure you have that instilled. And then sign-in off audit. So like I mentioned earlier, should there be a system in place where the president signs off for treasurer to make purchases or vice versa, especially if there's multiple cards involved. Taxes and tax exempt. So I'll just breeze through this one. So just because you're a student or a student with the university does not mean you're tax exempt, usually only if you're nationally affiliated and can utilize their tax exempt status. If you're ever having a takeout night where you're working with a restaurant or maybe your sponsor, we can provide a student activities fundraising letter. So this form is found on OrgSync. You fill it out, let us know what you need the letter for, and we'll send it to you. And the letter essentially says that your organization isn't fundraising for personal gain. Like this is definitely truly an organization registered with student activities at UNT, and usually most often they do accept that. If you are wanting to become tax exempt, please know that it's a very long process. Usually it's the 501c3 tax exempt status. And usually for that, you need to go through the IRS, you need an accountant, you need all kinds of things. So far, I don't believe we've ever had an org achieve this status, but if you're interested, please let us know. Resources, so we're in the final stretch. So resources, Student Money Management Center, usually a great resource. They usually, if you have members who are struggling to pay dues or things of that nature, refer them to the Student Money Management Center. They have coaches, they have workshops and all kinds of beautiful sessions. They also have a list of resources on their website. So after today's session, you all receive copies of these slides so you can have access to the links as well. Wells Fargo bank provider, those would primarily be your number one great contact to go to because they definitely know the ins and outs of their establishments more than we do. IRS as well. Sometimes we get a lot of questions about tax ID numbers, EINs. Sarah and I do not have access to your accounts, and we're also not well versed in these matters. So it's always great to go to the source. You can also use us. We don't know everything, but we hopefully will be able to assist you with a question or two. So please feel free to reach out to us if you're at a loss and you need some guidance. We also have a website on our website dedicated to treasurers called Money Matters. And so if you go to the student org webpage, go to officers, resources, it'll be right there. And it includes things such as some common restaurants that we know have worked with orgs when it comes to takeout nights or other ways to perform fundraisers. All right, y'all, we've made it. Any questions?